How old is your
That is perfect, actually, the way you're dressed. So we're on. The mic should be on.
hot mic?
Yes, the mics are on.
Okay.
All right. So welcome, my dear friends, to the 5th episode of the Rabbi and the Dermatologist. I've moved up after 4 from the lowly dermatologist to a little more informative dermatologist. And today we have an amazing special guest, a very close friend of mine, the famous Ross Dan. So, so he's here to ask some of the questions which are very, very important. Today's Parsha, the chapter that we'll be discussing, is the first chapter in the book Bamidbar, or Numbers. And we'll also talk about the Haftarah. And there is something really fascinating, which is the Jews are getting finally the Torah, the Shavuot. We've counted 50 days from the second day of Passover, and we're now getting that book, the book that will show us the path to a better life. And the idea we just were discussing with the Rabbi, why are we even doing this? And the reason we're doing it is that we're often searching for the answers to life's most complicated questions far and wide, when the answer sometimes is right here. And let's begin by reviewing the Parsha. And Rabbi, can you tell us about the Parshat Bamidbar?
Well, first of all, thank you. Our 5th episode. Wow. I didn't think I'd survive past 2, but amazing to be here again. Thank you to Dr. Levitt. Welcome, Ross, and also an old friend of mine. And Bamidbar literally means
in the desert.
And what's the book of? The book of
Numbers.
Usually Shemos is names,
Right.
and it's called the book of Exodus because it talks about the exodus of the Jews from Egypt. Vayikra, it means to call, but Leviticus talks about the Kohanim. We're in the 4th book, as you said so beautifully. I don't know how you speak. I have to learn how to speak like you. And yes, true. The book of Bamidbar, which means in the desert, means the books of, it doesn't mean it, but it's called the book of Numbers. Sefer HaPikudim. I remember a beautiful idea from Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. He was the Gadol Hadar in America, 20th century. We've discussed it many times. And in his book on the Chumash, on the Bible, he asks, why is it?
Gadol Hador means great of his
he was the greatest
generation.
The Jewish law decisor of the in the 20th century in America. So he asked, why is it if you find that Bamidbar is the book of Bamidbar, but the Parsha, the portion we read on this Shabbat, which is Bamidbar always before Shavuot, because Shavuot is this Sunday night, Monday and Tuesday. So how come it's always before? So he says such a beautiful idea. We call Bamidbar Sefer HaPikudim. What does Sefer HaPikudim mean?
The book of hierarchy.
Appointing, accounting according to some appoint. He says in Judaism, age old, we're known as people of the book.
Right.
Jews have always been literate. We give a primary focus on education. I'm not comparing it to anybody else, but even in the Middle Ages, we've had yeshivot, we had education from parent to child.
There are even laws about you not being allowed to live in a place unless there is a teacher there that you can teach.
So that's why I'm happy I live in Manhattan Beach. I have you. But the point is that
he's the most humble guy I know.
Thank you. Okay. The point is, he says it's right before Shavuot, because Shavuot, as you so wonderfully said, is the holiday that most people don't know about. They know Passover.
That's true.
A little bit they know Sukkot. Shavuos, who knows Shavuos? You can't take off work on Shavuos. Which Jewish holiday is that? It's the holiday when we accepted the tablets, the first time the 10 Commandments came down, and the Torah obviously came down. We accepted it as a Jewish nation when everyone else rejected it. That was Vav Sivan, which is this year the 6th day of Sivan, the Jewish month of Sivan. That's Sunday night, Monday, when we accept and we celebrate the accepting of Torah. So what's the idea that the book of Numbers is right before that? He says to teach that every Jewish person has a neshama, has a soul, which is connected to the original neshamas. I'm not going into Kabbalah right now for 2 reasons. One is I don't know Kabbalah, but also because it's going to bore everybody. But the idea is that everybody has a connection to the Torah, all what we call the 600,000 types of neshamos, the souls, and every Jew has a neshama, and everybody's connected. That means Torah is not limited to to the clergy, there's not right, to the rabbis or to the teachers. Torah is connected and accessible, or supposed to be accessible, to every single Jew, men, women, and children. And I think nowadays it's amazing. What we have online, we have the ou.org, which is Orthodox Union. They have the old Daf app, the old Parsha app, the old Torah app. It's an old Mishnah app. ArtScroll makes everything accessible. So there's no excuses anymore. You have to finish the entire Torah.
Well, we're doing it together, making it easy for you, chewing it out for you.
Well, let's get back.
Rabbi Akiva.
So everybody's accessible. Torah is accessible to everybody. If you look throughout the ages, many times Jews didn't always learn the Torah for many different reasons. How important do you think the Torah is to Jews? How about that as a profound question? Dr. Levitt.
Well, I think the fact that we're taking our time from our busy life and our families to come and learn means it's very important for us. It is our backbone. Without it, one of the three pillars of being a Jew, it's nation, it's the Torah, and God. Right. So without that, we're just not identified as Jews.
So it's the definition of being a Jew.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's an interesting take.
You may not realize that, but very often people, even towards their death, they remember Shema. They say, so they are connected. Where does Shema come from? It comes from the Bible, so right. the Torah. So you got Shema, the bracelet with the Shema. That's right.
Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Someone said it's the most ubiquitous Jewish prayer that there is. It's right before the bris milah by a boy, the circumcision, the night before all the kids from the community come and say Shema by the kids' bassinet, and then after 120, before 120 is up. It's the last prayer, hopefully, on a Jewish person's lips. It's a very ubiquitous prayer.
So that's about how important the Torah you asked for the Jews. So that's
unless it's lost in the generational crack of some sort, right?
Yeah. Well, it was lost to the Russians. I mean, they were forced out of us in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, Stalin did a great job of taking Torah away from the Jews.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. Here in Manhattan Beach, we see a tremendous amount of Russian Jews who have come back to learn Torah. Every Shabbos have the merit to learn with Dr. Levitt on Sundays. Yeah, and we explore different themes. So how do we get the Torah back in if there's a split or a schism?
So if we were to go back to our recent holiday, right, the holiday of Passover, we're talking about 4 sons, right?
Yeah.
The smart one or the wise one, right? That's the first generation that knows the Torah, right? That takes it to heart, right? The second generation is the one that flips and says, "I'm going to be communist," right?
Yeah.
"I'm going to be rebellious." The third generation, that is the simple one that only remembers what grandparents would talk about around the table during the Seder that people still come to. And the fourth generation is the one that's so removed that it doesn't even know how to ask a question.
That's such a poignant point.
So if you don't bring the education back to those sons, the fifth son marries a Chinese girl because he finally got his master's degree and he completely disappears and does not show up to the Seder at all.
Wow.
Right? So education is a key element to bring us back to.
So here in Manhattan Beach, we have, I think, Mazel Day School is a Blue Ribbon School. It's an amazing school over here. I think there are 400 kids in Mazel. It's an amazing thing. So that opens up how do you envision bringing Torah back to the third, fourth, fifth generation?
It's difficult, I guess, because the parents would need to agree to put their kids into the system, right? But once they realize the positives about it, it becomes a no-brainer. They say yes.
Wow.
I think sometimes it's not up to us. Sometimes it is the external forces that force us to go ahead and actually get back into the community. During the Holocaust, there were many people who didn't consider themselves Jewish, but they were pointed out, "You're a Jew." Yeah. And they're like, "But I don't even know anything about Judaism. I haven't gone to the shul. I don't know the inside, how it looks." No, you're a Jew. And so
more Polish. They thought themselves as
they knew Joseph, the emperor. They got an award from him. Yeah. They were Olympic champions. They didn't think themselves that some of them even said Heil Hitler, and they didn't realize that they would be looked at down, despite the fact that they converted even. And they said, no, this was the first time in history where even when you converted, you were still considered. And they still put them in the gas chambers.
Sure.
And that's when they united, that there were the Christian Jews and there were the Jewish Jews and that did not convert.
If the grandfather was Jewish, then the grandchildren are Jewish.
Yeah, and they actually found unity and prayed together because they realized they have to come back.
Right. It's such an interesting point. Someone told me once when there was internal fighting in the Jewish community, which happens sometimes, unfortunately. He says Hitler didn't care whether you were a shtreimel or a kippah sruga or no kippah at all. He goes, he just, you're a Jew, you're a Jew, you're a Jew. It's good enough.
Good enough.
So interesting, your point. You see, it's external. I think ever since October 7th, I've seen an uptick of Jewish people trying to understand their identity of being Jewish.
Because that's one of the positives about anti-Semitism is that they remind us who we are, and stick our face back into our own identity and say, by the way, you are Jewish, no matter what you say, no matter what you wear, no matter what you do. So it has a unifying element. So one of the reasons, if we go back to our heritage as former Soviet Jews, there was some intermarriage there, but many, because of anti-Semitism, were basically pointed back to the community, and they were said, okay, since I'm a Jew, I gotta marry another Jew, so they don't tell me that I am this I'm the dirty Jew, right? So
they don't feel like a rebel against their own family. That's social pressure. We found it by the Maskilim, the original Reform Jews of the 1812, 1818, where the Jewish question came up, even amongst Jews, not the German Jewish question, but the Jewish question is, okay, the ghetto walls came down, it's Enlightenment time. What was France's rallying call during Revolution? Liberty, fraternity, and equality, but not for the Jew. Not for everyone else, sure, but you're
right. That's what they said. For the Jews, as Jews, nothing. For the Jews, as French, everything. Yeah.
Correct. No, they said and the Jews said we're French citizens, some of the Mosaic faith.
Right.
We have loyalty. Some Jews, even like you brought up, they wanted to take out of the Siddur of the prayer book the bracha for Jerusalem,
right,
and the bracha for Mashiach, which is part and parcel of our Shmona Esrei, our 19 brachas nowadays, because they wanted to prove their loyalty either to the Prussian government, the German government, the French government. But like Ross said so eloquently, those that wanted to get into whatever host country they were in, they said, no, not so fast. Not so fast.
The Vichy, was it Vichy?
Yeah. Vichy government. That was during the war.
Helped them out.
Well, that was, yeah.
To realize where the alliances were and who they were. So the Germans wanted a certain amount of Jews per day, and the French overperformed by quite a few thousand per day.
Yeah. They even gave them the ages they didn't ask for. They asked from 18 before Sarasky.
Right. No, there was a book, Hitler's Willing Executioners, in the 90s.
Yeah.
Who wrote that book? You remember that? Gold something?
I didn't read
but
that.
They came out. What were you saying just now? I'm sorry.
No. I was saying that they even gave them, they said we want people from the age of, I think it was 18 to 35 or something like that. And they gave them even the people who were 12, 14, all the children even, they gave to the Germans. So they,
So they could grab the fancy apartments.
For whatever reason, I don't know. I think that was a secondary. The 12-year-old is not going to hold up to his apartment, I think. But there was just a desire to, capitulate and to gratify the Nazi
machine.
You had it in France. You had it in Hungary in 44 to 45. You had it in. Let's get back.
That was a little different there.
So the failure of Jews to assimilate, the failure of, I guess one of the main things that we had, I think we spoke about it last week or 2 weeks ago, a few weeks ago. We didn't have Israel for many, many hundreds of years. So what kept the Jews going? Where they were kept going, what kept the Jews alive? Synagogues, shuls, where they could gather and talk and feel, be amongst their own. But I think definitely the education and the Torah and the intellectuality that Torah represents, the specialness, the spirituality. Jews have a land. the land is Israel, but I think the Torah, like you said much earlier, is something that kept us as a nation, kept us alive as a soul.
Right. It gave us our identity. I agree, both emotionally and spiritually, physically. We're digressing a little bit about, you were about to say that the pikudim that were of the Bamidbar.
So Moshe Feinstein said that every Jew has a shaykhus. A shaykhus means a connection, has accessibility to the Torah. It doesn't belong to the 1%. It doesn't belong to any one person in particular, any power body. The Torah belongs to every single Jew. Rabbi Akiva, we discussed, was a 40-year-old shepherd, and he famously was the continuity of the Torah Shabbat, the oral law. Even though he only started learning Torah at 40 years old, his wife Rachel found him, understood that he had great powers, great potential, even though she was disowned by her father Kalba Savua in Jerusalem, who was one of the richest Jews. And she said, if you marry this poor shepherd, we're going to throw you out. And he did. And many, many years later, he ate his words and he let him back in when he realized that his son-in-law, Rabbi Akiva, was the Gadol Hadar. So I think one of the stories that also you find by David HaMelech was the great-grandson of who? Ruth. That we read Megillas Ruth.
And we'll talk about that.
On Shavuot.
Hopefully you'll get to talk about that.
But she was a Giyayra. She was a convert.
Right.
And David was not a person that he grew up. His whole life, for 70 years of life, were full of travesty, full of tragedy, but he kept everything going, and he was one of the greatest leaders the Jews have ever had. So Torah is...
God is my shepherd, I shall not want.
But the point that Moshe Feinstein says is every Jew is connected to Torah, could fly with Torah, could make Torah part of his life. All 613. Everyone's connected to it.
Okay, so the idea is now, the question is, why do you think in Parshat Bamidbar you have a census? And I know that when King David tried to make a census, it caused a huge magefa, a huge, so he did it the wrong way. But I'm not trying to get you into that direction. We can leave that as a curiosity. But why was it important to make an order? Each tribe had to have its flag and location. Each one had to have the position before we are getting into Shavuot, before we're getting the laws. Why was it so important to organize it so properly before you're giving out those 10 commands? Trying to think as a leader or as a commander, why would it be so important?
Well, perhaps if you have different responsibilities for each tribe, that's also
no
some
question,
of it,
no
right?
question that everybody has, whether they like it or not, everybody has a job in place. Not everybody in Levitt dermatology could be Dr. Levitt. There's only one Dr. Levitt, only one Mrs. Levitt, and only one front desk woman, right? That's a very simple example. But in an army, like you've been in, right? Everybody has their place. Everyone has their job. Every one of the tribes was special, was different. Each one had their role. The Levites were the Kohanim, right? And the Levites. And Judah was the kings, right? Yasser Shevet mi Yehuda. So Judah was the kings. And so on and so forth. And when they finally made it to Israel, each tribe had their place in the land of Israel.
So were they given separate blessings?
From Benjamin?
Yeah, so the first king was from Benjamin. It's a great question. Not the time to go into right now. But that was good. No, I can say very simply, it's God ordained. God told Samuel Shmuel to anoint him as king. He had his role, he had his place. But after him, David was the king, famously. And from the time David became king, Lo Yasser Shevet mi Yehuda, the staff of kingship would never go off from the tribe of Yehuda.
And I'm not aware, but were the kings of Israel also?
I believe it was so, except for the last kings who were the Chashmonaim.
Right.
But they took it illegally. They were Kohanim. They were the heroes of Hanukkah.
Right. So.
And they took the kingship illegally. This is from the Talmud.
Right.
And ultimately they lost out tragically because of that. Everyone has their place. But I think you asked why was it important to put it. I think that's a very good answer. I think it's a nice answer. Everyone has their place.
But were they given specific blessings by
Moshe before he
Moshe?
died? Sure. In Zos HaBracha, they're given By Jacob, they were given in Parshas Vayechi, and Moshe before he passed it. The very last parsha, they were given specific blessings.
So the way I was reading, one of the very beautiful ideas was, before they can move on in the desert, it's Bamidbar, before they can move on, like any army or any kind of people, you have to have a mission statement, a mission plan.
Oh, yes.
So you get those 10 commandments, those laws, but you also have to get yourself in order to receive it. It's kind of like we're preparing for the special event, for Yom Kippur, for a holiday. You have to be, from the outside, you have to get dressed, and then you're able to receive from the inside. You go to the mikvah, you clean yourself up physically, and then you're ready to receive it spiritually. So we are entering this point. We're getting a census of all the men. The women were not counted, if I remember correctly.
The men were counted 600,000 men.
600,000 men.
3 million plus, probably, with
Right.
women and children.
Right.
600,000 men from the age of 20 to 60.
Correct. The I guess army fighting age, was that?
Age,
yeah. And once they put them in order, then they were able to, let's get to the internal.
I think that idea of a mission statement is brilliant, because I think not only is it about order and hierarchy, not only about mission statement, it's also about clarity. One of the great Musar, Musar, there was a school of thought called Musar. Rabbi Salanta founded it, and it was the idea that an orderly person could be a successful person. Like if you make it, some of the great generals of the U.S. Army said, if you make the first thing you do every morning is make your bed, because you make your bed. Yeah, so if you make your bed, and it works very well. And the idea is the clarity of mission, the clarity of, I'm in Shevet Dan, I'm in Shevet Levi, I'm in Shevet Reuven. I know where I am in my place, gives an internal clarity of mission to who you are as a Jew and what you need to do. You look now, you have.
We actually spoke about this earlier in your kitchen about a position you hold and the identity that you attach to it, right? Your job gives you some element of an identity. So as a tribe, if your job is, let's say, to be a quick runner, right? Who was it? Done, right? So, if you attach yourself to that identity, that means you have to wake up and perhaps train, do a run, and do other things, right?
100%. 100%. It's a very nice
point. At which point does making those tribes divide you, and at which point does
brilliant? I think what you're saying is it divides them. Why? Because they're different tribes?
Because now you have between tribes kind of competitiveness, and maybe, my tribe is better than your tribe.
Oh, what a beautiful.
Perhaps it's the opposite. Since the jobs are completely different, there's no competition. If we run fast and deliver, you guys do the teaching and the others do the fishing and you do the cooking.
Right.
And then it's we united, we stand, right? Because each part gives another leg to the platform, right?
But the interesting thing is, it worried even King David, because when King David was looking for where will he put his capital,